I'm Luke Williams, founder and editor of the XR Beat, where I cover the business of XR and how the technology is being used in the workplace. Today, I'm joined by Dace Campbell from Cintoo. Cintoo turns large reality capture datasets into lightweight 3D environments that teams can access through a browser, desktop, or virtual reality. Congratulations, Dace, first of all, to you and the Cintoo team. Your VR experience recently won the AWE Augie Award for Best Reality Capture Solution. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a huge honor and great to get the recognition from the XR industry.
Great. So can you describe the mechanical room example that you've shared before, including who was involved and the decision that they needed to make?
Sure, sure. So Cintoo has a customer who had a mechanical room where they were trying to add on to their existing boiler. And they used our tools to explore, in this case, in virtual reality, to try and understand where they could fit in the new boiler. They had been doing some work on the desktop and thought they had a solution. Once they looked at the environment that they had scanned in virtual reality, they realized that while the new boiler could fit technically, it would be difficult, if not impossible, to actually install and hook up from behind because there were so many other pipes and mechanical systems behind. So they made a different decision to replace the existing boiler rather than add on. The upshot here is they were able to diagnose and discover problems using virtual reality that they simply couldn't see readily on the desktop. So in this case, VR helped expose the problem and accelerate their resolution of the issue.
And how would that team normally review that same issue without Cintoo's solution?
Assuming a team had done some reality capture or laser scanning of the environment, they would probably look at the data that comes out of that, the point cloud. They would probably look at that on a desktop application, possibly something similar like a web application. The problem is these point clouds, which are kind of the native source format from reality capture, they're pretty large, they're pretty unwieldy. They can range from hundreds of scans to even thousands of scans, and with it can be terabytes or even gigabytes of information. It makes it just really cumbersome to use and to share with others. So our industry professionals will take screenshots or do little video clips, try to document the issue with crayons if they have to, and send those to somebody else, throw the issue over the wall and kind of asynchronously try to resolve the issue. Not a great way to interpret the data.
For people that don't work in this specific vertical, just give some idea of where that process does become slow or ambiguous. Is it navigating the scan, sharing screenshots, explaining locations, that kind of thing?
It starts with navigating. Often, it's a solo experience, right? So a solo industry practitioner is looking at their reality capture data set, and often that's just what it is. It's a place to look at scans, or a tool so we can look at scans, and navigating can be easy at times, or it can be difficult depending on the complexity of the data set. Where it becomes more of a challenge, though, is when more than one person needs to weigh in on a decision of any kind, especially if it's a complex spatial decision. One professional is left to try to document and share their idea or their concern with somebody else who may not have access to the tool, or if they do, may not know how to navigate it. Often a decision maker isn't necessarily the technical person who has the know-how with their hands on the keyboard. And so they're left trying to use other tools to communicate and solve a problem, whether that's describing it verbally or like I said, taking kind of screenshots or screen shares. But all those leave kind of one person as kind of the high priest behind the keyboard, where the other person is left being kind of a consumer, but at the whim of that other person doing the translating and the interpretation for them. Not an ideal situation for the decision maker being on the outside looking in.
No, absolutely not. Okay, so let's enter the shared environment now, so to speak. Take us through the review inside the Cintoo workspace. What can each participant actually see and do once they join?
So in Cintoo Workspace, every participant can enter the space. And again, this is whether it's in desktop or web app or in immersive virtual reality with a personal headset or in a kind of a shared physical space, an immersive room, if you will. Any of those modalities to enter the space, and it's as natural as you and I getting together in a room. We're walking around in an environment at full scale. You have, of course, scaling capabilities, so you can be Godzilla scale, looking down and seeing everything in context. But really, it's meant to be seen at that kind of first person point of view, true scale. And that's it. After that, it just fosters a conversation, whether it's a conversation like you and I are having with avatars, or you can chat with others. We have a few tools in development right now to allow people to host and lead meetings where others are more passive participants and can follow along if people don't have a comfort level being an active participant. But the point is, it's a very natural interface to walk through a space and explore an issue, no different than if you and I were in the same room together.
And just to expand on that a little bit, Dace, what could people establish together in extended reality that one person just controlling a desktop screen, let's say, would struggle to communicate?
Great question. An effective decision is a product of making the right decision multiplied by the buy-in to that decision. And what this does is, rather than somebody acting on behalf of their colleagues or their stakeholders, navigating around, pointing out issues, trying to make decisions on their behalf, it engages everybody on equal footing and really allows, and I would argue forces them to be an active participant, being engaged in the decision-making process. And by being engaged, they're far more likely to have buy-in to whatever the decision is, whatever the issue is they're trying to resolve.
Buy-in is incredibly important as well, with multiple stakeholders involved. So let's think back to your mechanical room example now that we spoke about a little earlier on. What changed in the decision because the team reviewed it together spatially?
Well, in that particular example, specifically the decision was not to add on to the existing boiler with a new boiler with additional capacity, but rather a wholesale replacement of the existing boiler with a larger one. It had a bunch of advantages, being able to take advantage of the existing concrete housekeeping pad and so forth. But really what changed was confidence in that they had made the right decision, because they were there, they felt like they had seen it firsthand, and they really felt that they had a greater understanding of the issue and ultimately greater confidence that they're onto the right track.
So it's a higher quality decision. Were there also benefits like reaching the decision faster, or avoiding another site visit?
Yeah, absolutely. Both of those can be true in any scenario. In this case in particular, it was less about the speed of the decision, although that was certainly true. But ultimately, it came down to speed of the entire resolution. And what I mean by that is, had they made the wrong decision, they could have reached it faster. They ultimately would have had a delay in the field executing the work. When they realized it didn't work, they would have had to call a timeout, revise their plan impromptu in the field, do some rework. And rework implies delays. It implies potential safety issues, because people are now executing on work and undoing work that they didn't originally plan for, so they're in a hurry. So there's lots of downstream effects from what can happen if you don't reach the right decision first.
And Dace, which additional information is usually connected to the scan itself? I'm thinking things like BIM data, asset records, maintenance information.
Yeah, in many ways, all the above can be associated with the scan data. Certainly, Cintoo allows for bringing in the building information model, the BIM or BIM data, as a data source on relatively equal footing to the scan data, the point cloud data. Once the models and the scan data are together in the environment, anybody can segment that database, can identify certain assets, and then link those tagged assets to any number of kind of metadata, something to do with its operational history or its maintenance records. It's really up to the owner or the operator of that data set to decide what they would want to associate. But yeah, absolutely free to associate all kinds of metadata with the models and the scans.
That's really interesting, Dace. Let's now think about the commercial side of Cintoo and the projects that you run. If a company pilots a shared XR review, What are the results that it should measure first?
Ooh, good question. Well, certainly, as you mentioned earlier, there is a sort of a speed to decision making that can come into play. And as I mentioned, there's sort of a confidence in the decision making. That's a little harder to measure. It's maybe a little more subjective. But ultimately, if it's a more effective decision, it really depends on the particular industry player, right? A designer may be motivated to reach the absolute right decision no matter how long it takes. A contractor may be motivated to reach a decision faster, whether it's the best decision. An owner may be motivated to reach the least expensive decision. So everybody has their own motivations.
Hmm.
And I would argue, depending on that context, any one of those is relevant or applies as a way to kind of measure the effectiveness of their decisions.
Yeah, and do you have any evidence on things like decision time, meetings, site visits, or are those results still being measured during the private beta?
Yeah, they are still under measurement, but I would say with a lot of confidence, we're hitting on all cylinders, right? We are seeing people already, even before the official results are tallied or in, people are already seeing, faster and more effective decisions. In some cases, pretty dramatically. And
Hmm.
I'd say the real endorsement is when people say that, there's this kind of recognition that now that they have this tool, they wouldn't want to go back to any other way. Immediately and intuitively see how effective it is in improving their process.
Sounds like you're getting some really good early feedback days. But let me ask you this. Are there any reviews that are still quicker through a browser, a screen share, or even a physical site visit?
Yeah, absolutely. We look at Cintoo Workspace and its capabilities that it offers in VR as a supplement and as an extension to a desktop workflow or a web workflow. So it's not a wholesale replacement. Those more traditional ways of hosting a decision making meeting or communicating still have their place. I would argue
Hmm.
the VR is more effective and the real time collaboration is far more effective. But for a solo participant not collaborating or maybe working on their desktop, there is still a lot of value. Sometimes people need time to think and time to research and don't want to make a decision with colleagues, with other stakeholders in the moment in real time. So there's still a place. So I'm not sure if it's faster, but sometimes it's just more appropriate for somebody to study an issue by themselves, think it through, do some more kind of thoughtful analysis before reaching a decision in real time with their stakeholders.
And then after the session ends, how is the decision recorded and sort of carried into the customer's existing workflow?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways that works. So one, we strive to have any decisions made or any data that's been changed in the process to be persistent,
Hmm.
kind of auto saved, if you will, so that the environment has a memory of the decisions being made. That data set can be reopened and those state changes have persisted. We also have tools that allow people in the moment of decision making to record it or even document an issue that then has a life of its own as its own entity as an issue to be resolved by somebody else later on in the workflow.
And just as a follow up to that, can an agreed issue become an assigned task or an auditable record inside tools like Procore or Autodesk Construction Cloud?
Absolutely. So our issues are something that can be tracked internally within the Cintoo environment, and we do work with external partners like Procore to meet their standards so that our issues can be tracked externally.
And now let's finish by thinking about the buyer themselves. So, which projects, team, and review problem typically make the best first deployment for Cintoo Workspace?
Ooh, good question. So Cintoo Workspace is available to all existing Cintoo customers. It's an extension to the underlying core application, and our customers are already working on incredibly complex projects. So I would say there is not necessarily a right project. There's an argument for saying pick up a small one to test it out, and there's an argument for saying pick your hairiest, ugliest, most complex problem you have and throw this at it to see if it can help solve it. So I'd say
Hmm.
there isn't necessarily a default or best project type.
And so, as a natural follow on to that, Dace, what should a buyer actually have in place before considering using Cintoo?
So yeah, for using Cintoo, you definitely want to have your reality capture processes in place, right? No matter who you've picked as a vendor, and Cintoo remains agnostic to almost any reality capture hardware or system. So that's certainly something that should be in place when starting to use Cintoo or Cintoo Workspace in particular. Also would help to have a reasonably contemporary set of computing hardware. A modern laptop or desktop hardware certainly helps. The modern graphics card will help performance. And then probably just at least as important to the kind of the technical answer would be more of a cultural or a process answer. Having a process in place by which project stakeholders can meet and allow for those kinds of conversations in real time. Some customers simply don't have that, right? Because they've never had this opportunity before to solve an issue in real time. They may not have a process in place to do so. And it might be foreign to them to say, let's just get person X in the room here and make the decision together. So I'd say giving some thought to a process that accommodates that real-time decision making.
Dace, that's all I had for you today. It was really, really interesting to find out about the Cintoo solution. Thanks once more for your time. Take care.
Thanks so much, Luke.